A woman gets into the back of a stranger's car. She gives an address. She doesn't say much else. A few miles down the road, the driver glances in the rearview mirror. The seat is empty. The door hasn't opened. The car hasn't stopped. This has been reported to Kent Police more than 50 times. Tonight, we're on the A229, Bluebell Hill, a steep, winding stretch of road between Maidstone and the Medway towns. By day, unremarkable. By night, particularly on dark, misty evenings in autumn and winter, something else entirely. The question we're investigating tonight is not a simple one, but by the end of this video, you'll have the evidence. You'll have my verdict, and then, as always, the decision is yours. Is the Phantom of Bluebell Hill myth or reality? What is it about this particular stretch of road that has generated more reported ghost encounters than almost anywhere else in Britain? Before we get to the ghost, we need to understand the place. The A229 runs through the North Downs, a ridge of chalk downland that cuts through the heart of Kent. Bluebell Hill sits at a steep section of this ridge. The road climbs sharply, bends sharply, and at night it's dark, isolated, and frequently thick with mist rising off the surrounding fields. But the road is the least of it. Above the A229, within walking distance, visible from certain points along the hill, stand the remains of Kit's Cotty House, a Neolithic burial chamber, 3 standing stones and a capstone, thousands of years old. A short distance away lie the scattered remnants of little Kit's Cotty, what locals call the Countless Stones, the broken remains of another ancient monument. This is a place where people have been buried in the earth since before recorded history. Whether you believe that matters to what follows. That's for you to decide. But it shapes the atmosphere, it shapes the stories, and it shapes the question that researchers keep coming back to. Why here? Why this hill? Why, for over 60 years, has this particular stretch of road produced account after account of the same inexplicable encounter? The answers start in November 1965, but they may not end there. 3 women died on Bluebell Hill in the days surrounding a single November night in 1965. One of them was supposed to be married the following morning. Did her story end with the crash, or did it continue? The 19th of November, 1965. 4 young women in a Ford Cortina heading home along the A229 after a celebration in Rochester. A hen night. The bride-to-be was 22-year-old Suzanne Brown. Her wedding was the following day. She was to marry Brian Wetton, an RAF technician. The car never reached its destination. On the curves of Bluebell Hill, the Cortina collided with a Jaguar. The impact destroyed the smaller vehicle. 2 people in the Jaguar escaped with minor injuries. Of the 4 women in the Cortina, Patricia Ferguson was killed at the scene. Suzanne Brown and Judith Lingham survived the crash itself, but both died in Maidstone Hospital in the days that followed. The 4th woman survived. 3 young women dead. 1 wedding that would never happen. The following morning, guests arrived at the church. Some of them did not yet know. They came dressed for a celebration. Nobody had found the words yet. It is one of the most heartbreaking details in this entire story. In the years that followed, reports of a young woman on Bluebell Hill began to accumulate. Pale complexion, fair hair, light clothing, sometimes appearing at the roadside, sometimes inside a vehicle, only to vanish before the car arrived at its destination. The connection to Susan Brown was made quickly, and it held. Here, people said, was the bride who never reached her wedding day, still trying to get home, still dressed for a celebration that ended in wreckage on a dark Kent road. It is a powerful image, a tragic one. But is it the true origin of what people are seeing? Not everyone thinks so. Some researchers believe Bluebell Hill was haunted long before 1965. If that's accurate, who was here first? The primary published study of this haunting, Sean Tudor's The Ghosts of Bluebell Hill and Other Road Ghosts, documents over 50 witness accounts and traces the legend back well before the 1965 crash. Recorded sightings go back as far as 1934, when a woman named Rennie was cycling down the hill on a dim autumn evening and was thrown from a bicycle after striking what she described as a sudden dark mist. Something solid that left no trace. If the earliest sightings date to 1934, the haunting began when Susan Brown was not yet born, which forces an uncomfortable question. If the ghost isn't the bride, who is she? Local paranormal researcher Neil Arnold and others point to August 1969. A 20-year-old domestic servant named Emily Trigg left her employer's home in Rochester on Sunday afternoon to walk up a hill to her mother's house in Providence Row. She never arrived. Her skeleton was found 6 weeks later by a family picking blackberries in woodland beside the road. Her clothing had been cut and stripped from her body. A piece of her own garment had been forced into her mouth. The inquest jury returned an open verdict. The cause of death was never formally established. A killer was never identified. Her case has never been solved. Emily Trigg, a young woman, alone on Bluebell Hill, her case largely forgotten until researchers began to ask whether the ghosts the drivers had been reporting for decades might have been wearing the wrong face all along. There is a third possibility. Kit's Cotty House stands within sight of the road. The Neolithic dead have been in this ground for millennia. Some paranormal researchers have suggested the hill may carry something accumulated, that the phantom is not a single individual but something older, something without a name, tied to the landscape itself. 3 possible origins, 1 ghost, or more than one. The identity of what people are seeing on this road is genuinely unresolved. What is not unresolved is how many people have seen it. Dozens of drivers have reported the same encounter on Bluebell Hill. Several of them went directly to the police. What did the police find when they arrived? The first printed account of the phantom hitchhiker appeared in 1968. A young woman, a lift offered near the Lower Bell pub, a brief, quiet journey, then nothing, an empty seat and a car that had not stopped. The pattern was already set. But the account that shifted this from folklore into something harder to dismiss came 6 years later. The 13th of July 1974, a bricklayer named Maurice Goodenough was driving the A229 when a young girl ran into the road. He struck her. Certain she was injured, she took a blanket from his car, wrapped her in it, and laid her carefully at the roadside. He then drove to Rochester Police Station to report the accident. The officers came back with him. The girl was gone. The blanket lay on the grass verge, empty. A search was launched. Police dogs were deployed. The surrounding area was covered. Nothing was found. No body, no blood. No sign of any impact on Goodenough's vehicle. No missing persons reported that matched. Just an empty blanket on the verge, laid as though placed there with care. Maurice Goodenough was a working man, not given to invention. He filled out a police report. He was visibly shaken. He did not retract his account, and the police, whatever they thought privately, could not explain the blanket. In November 1992, a coach driver named Ian Sharp had a similar experience. On the night of the 8th of November, he was heading home to Maidstone when a woman appeared directly in front of his vehicle near the Aylesford turnoff of the A229. He was certain he had struck her. He stopped, got out, searched under and around the vehicle. He found nothing. The story ran on the front page of the Kent Today on the 10th of November 1992. Sharp told the paper he had been looking directly at her at the moment of impact, and that when he looked under the vehicle, there was simply nothing there. He went to Rochester Police Station and reported it. The encounters form a pattern across more than 50 documented reports spanning over 60 years. It is almost always late at night. The weather is frequently misty or wet. A lone female figure, pale hair, fair, dressed in light clothing, appears at the roadside or, in some accounts, is already inside the vehicle. She speaks in some cases, gives an address, makes brief conversation, and then vanishes, either from inside a moving car or on impact, leaving no trace on the vehicle and no body on the road. The witnesses are not a homogeneous group. They include working people, professionals, a bricklayer, a coach driver, and multiple individuals who had no prior knowledge of the legend before their own encounter. Almost all of them called the police. The police responded. The police found nothing. 50 plus times. If you're finding this investigation compelling, the Myth or Reality store has ebooks, exclusive merchandise and more. Link is below. Now, back to Bluebell Hill. Rational explanations have been offered for what people see on Bluebell Hill. Some of them are persuasive, but can any of them account for the blanket on the verge? The sceptical case is not without merit. The vanishing hitchhiker is one of the most universal ghost story archetypes in the world. Versions of it exist in Japan, the United States, South Africa, and dozens of other countries. Folklorists point out that the story follows a recognisable structure: the encounter, the quiet passenger, the vanishing, the discovery that the hitchhiker was already dead. Its universality suggests it may be a product of collective imagination rather than documented fact. Bluebell Hill also has characteristics that could produce false sightings. The road is steep and winding. At night, in mist or rain, visibility can drop dramatically. The interplay of headlights, fog, and shadow can create shapes at the edge of perception. Driver fatigue on a long, dark stretch of road can produce brief hallucinatory episodes. This is a known, documented phenomenon. Some investigators have pointed to the geology of the North Downs, the chalk substrate, and theoretical electromagnetic anomalies in the landscape as a possible contributor to altered perceptions in susceptible individuals. These are reasonable propositions. They struggle, however, against specific details. Maurice Goodenough's officers found a blanket on the verge. A blanket does not place itself on a grass verge. Either someone was there, or Goodenough laid it there himself and was mistaken about the cause. But that still does not explain the absence of any physical evidence of a collision on his vehicle. 50 separate witnesses separated by years with no apparent connection to one another, describing the same figure in the same location with the same physical characteristics. Driver fatigue does not account for consistency of this kind across 6 decades and multiple individuals. And driver fatigue does not account for a passenger who speaks, who gives a specific address, who converses with the driver before vanishing. The sceptical explanations are credible for some of this. They are not credible for all of it. Bluebell Hill is still being watched, reported, investigated. What has been found in the 21st century, and has anything changed? The sightings have not stopped. Reports of the phantom hitchhiker have continued well into the 21st century. The Association for the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena, the ASSAP, has described the Bluebell Hill case as one of the foremost modern examples of a road ghost in Britain. New witnesses continue to come forward. Ghost hunting groups return to the hill year after year. In February 2022, a heavy snowstorm brought traffic on the A229 to a standstill. Photographs taken by drivers stranded on the road began circulating in paranormal communities online. At least one image appeared to show a pale, indistinct figure standing at the central reservation, watching. Skeptics suggested it was a reflection, a smear on glass, or a trick of light on falling snow. Others were less willing to dismiss it. The original source of the photograph has not been conclusively traced, and this account should be treated as unverified until a primary source is confirmed. What is not in dispute is that the legend has not diminished with time. This is a road where 3 young women died across a single November in 1965, where a young woman was found murdered in 1916, where Neolithic burial chambers stand in the fields above. The combination of verified tragedy and persistent, consistent witness accounts has made Bluebell Hill something rare in British folklore. A ghost story that refuses to become just a ghost story. Locals travel it with a specific quiet unease, particularly in November, particularly after dark, particularly when the mist is in. Whether that unease is rational, that is the question. So, who is the woman on Bluebell Hill? The crash of the 19th of November 1965 is documented fact. Patricia Ferguson died at the scene on the A229. Susan Brown and Judith Lingham died in Mason Hospital in the days that followed. Brian Wetton's bride never reached their wedding day. The grief of that night and the days after it is real. The detail of the wedding guests arriving at the church the following morning, that is real. Emily Trigg is a name most people do not know, a young woman who disappeared on the same hill in August 1969, whose skeleton was found in the woods 6 weeks later, whose killer was never identified, and whose inquest produced no verdict on cause of death. That case is real. That it remains unsolved is real. The police reports are real. Maurice Goodenough's blanket on the verge was real. The 50-plus witnesses across 60 years, many of them with no prior knowledge of the legend, those accounts are real. What those accounts mean is where the disagreement starts. Bluebell Hill is a road with documented tragedy embedded in its history. Whether that tragedy has left something behind, something that climbs into cars at night, gives an address in a quiet voice, and then disappears before the destination is reached, that remains unverified. My verdict: the tragedy is real. The witnesses are real. The pattern is extraordinary and largely unexplained. The supernatural explanation has not been proven, which brings us back to where we started. A woman in the back seat, an address whispered in the dark, an empty car. If you were driving Bluebell Hill late tonight and a lone figure appeared at the edge of your headlights, would you stop? Investigate, decide, discover the truth.